And what will today's assassination of a terrorist figure mean for Somalia and for its suffering people? For that, we turn to Ahmed Samatar, Dean of the Institute for Global Citizenship at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota. Born in Somalia, he's now a U.S. citizen. And Andre Lesage, an assistant professor of terrorism and counterterrorism at the National Defense University. He's been an advisor to peace negotiations in Somalia and elsewhere in Africa. Welcome to you both. Professor Lesage, first of all, just a little bit more about IRO. What can you add to what Jeff Gettleman said in terms of where he fits into the structure of the Islamist insurgency in Somalia?
Adan Iro is a senior militia commander with the al-Shabab militia. This is an Islamic militia faction that really came to prominence since 2006 when the Union of Islamic Courts, a amalgamation of Islamic courts that were primarily based in Mogadishu, came together and took over much of southern and central Somalia.
And they're the ones that they seized power in 2006, but it wasn't for long.
It wasn't for long. In 2007, Ethiopian forces entered into Somalia and basically ousted the Islamic courts. Since that point in time, a transitional federal government has been based in Mogadishu with Ethiopian support, but also with support from the international community and an African Union peacekeeping mission.
And Professor Samatar, how significant a figure would you say Iro was?
Not really that significant. I think the identity and where his location is in the structure of what one will call the national resistance movement to the invasion of Ethiopian troops and the American support for that invasion is overblown. I mean, there are others who are leaders of that resistance movement, but there's no question that among the militants, he was a very ferocious individual, and the way that your correspondent in Nairobi has described it to a certain extent is accurate.
So the big question here, Andre Lesage, is what impact will this one assassination have on the chaotic situation there, both in terms of security terms and in terms of the incredible human suffering that we just saw in that piece?
Professor Samatar is very correct to say that Adan Iro and the Shabab movement have been one part of a much larger insurgency in opposition to a transitional federal government that really is still trying to impose governance and bring peace to Somalia. However, we do have to recognize that al-Shabaab has really become the hardline faction targeting international aid workers, preventing humanitarian assistance from arriving in Somalia, targeting international journalists that have been there, and also targeting peacemakers, Somali peacemakers that are trying to broaden the base of the transitional federal government.
So do you think his removal from the scene will improve the chaotic situation, or is he just going to be replaced by someone else?
Al-Shabaab is a very diverse movement, and I don't think we can talk about it as a single hierarchical organization. Since the Ethiopian invasion of Somalia, Al-Shabaab and the insurgency itself has splintered, and it really covers much of southern Somalia at this point. It operates in various pockets where it's able to find support and it's able to find refuge, and it is providing protection for the Al-Qaeda East Africa cell. I think we need to recognize the importance of this. Al-Shabaab on its own is a major threat in the Somali context. It becomes an international threat, a threat to international peace and neighboring countries such as Kenya and Ethiopia by providing succor to Al-Qaeda East Africa cell.
Professor Samatar, back to the situation. Oh, go ahead. You wanted to comment.
Yeah. Well, Margaret, I think I want to get in here and disagree to a certain extent. I think the issue in Somalia, really in the fundamental sense, is not about Al-Shabaab or a particular militant group. That's really the topsoil. Deep underneath that, the real question is the reclamation of Somali national identity and history and institutions. There is a national resistance movement going on in Somalia, and the focus of that national resistance movement is a Somali transitional federal government which was created by the Ethiopian government that really has no legitimacy, nor does it have any competence. And then, of course, the Ethiopian invasion. Invasion by itself is a very violent business, and the Somali people are responding to that in a variety of ways, and Al-Shabaab are one of those responses.
But are you saying that his removal from the scene then will have no impact? That all this, the resistance will go on, and the chaotic situation we saw will go on?
Right. In fact, worse. My argument is that, and I think this is what you can hear from the Somali people around, both inside and outside of the country, and that is target assassinations in the final analysis might be successful in taking out the individual or the individuals that one is hunting for. But the consequences of that is to make people who are now in the middle and who really are peaceful people and who are not interested in violence to be increasingly pushed to become more militant and therefore dare to take violence as an instrument to liberate their country from the invasion of the Ethiopians and this transitional government which the Ethiopians have imposed on the Somali people.
Professor Lesage?
Definitely there is a political issue at the heart of the Somali conflict, and short-term counterterrorism security measures, while they might improve the situation for immediate security in the Horn of Africa and in Somalia, neighboring countries such as Kenya or Tanzania, where the al-Qaeda East Africa cell has struck, and in 1998 targeted the U.S. embassies in both of those countries, came back and targeted Western tourists and an Israeli jetliner in 2002. Short-term security could be improved by some of these targeted counterterrorism actions. At the same time, we definitely need a much longer-term peace effort to get the transitional federal government to reach out to opposition elements, not necessarily the hardline Islamists.
Sir, I'm sorry, but Professor Samatar, I want to save a couple minutes here for the desperate humanitarian situation. Give us a picture of how bad it is on the ground. Is aid able to get in at all? Are people getting fed? Yes. What is that situation?
I will do so, but just quickly, Margaret, I think the policy of trying to use violence to destroy Somali national resistance movement is a folly, and it's an inept American foreign policy that in the end is going to trigger more danger for all of us. But the humanitarian question is a serious one. Nearly 10,000 people now are dead. Many, many more, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands are injured. And of course, more than 1 million, maybe even 1.5 million are now huddled together in variety of refugee camps inside the country. And therefore, the international aid cannot come in a context in which violence is everywhere. And the people responsible for this violence are the Ethiopian military troops who have invaded the country and the transitional federal government that doesn't have any credibility and therefore any legitimacy in the country.
What's your assessment of the humanitarian situation? I know you've been involved in aid efforts yourself.
Definitely the humanitarian situation in Somalia is serious and dire. We have a recurring humanitarian crisis there with a combination of internal displacement, as Professor Samatar mentioned, as well as the ongoing conflict which prevents international assistance from arriving. And until we have a transitional government that is able to reach out to its political opposition, establish a functioning civil service and ministries that can deliver health care, education, and other essential services, we're going to continue to have problems when conflict is combined with food shortages, with droughts, with flooding, and then we have a situation where only relief agencies can help to pick up the pieces.
And Professor Samatar, we also now have a global food crisis, or certainly one of price. Is that affecting Somalia?
Well, yes. When you do this archaeology of this problem, I think the most immediate one now you can see, of course, is the fact that the prices of basic commodities like maize and rice and oil and things like that, milk, really are increasingly becoming very expensive. So when you have a national decomposition with the institutions no more, a foreign invasion, and an inept so-called transitional federal government, then it compounds the immediate problems of the cost of prices for immediate food and other things that people need. That becomes even a major problem. But underneath that, I want to underscore, is really a national Somali resistance movement that wants to reclaim its history, its national identity, and therefore its national institutions. Somalis love their country like everybody else their country, and they want to liberate it. That's the basic story here.
Professor Samatar, Professor Lesage, thank you both.